Hey, hello everybody. I just wanted to come to you again tonight. I got something it's been on my mind lately, and I thought I would do another short video about this thought. And the thought is how we deal with each other as conservatives more in an election cycle like this. Now that our primaries are over in the GOP, and we've got Trump as our candidate, and we're heading into a really crucial election this November. It just occurred to me, I've been thinking about this kind of split, and the way I want to explain it to you is there's sort of two opposite poles of ways to deal with choosing our candidates, and then how we react to them and how we react to each other once a candidate's been chosen. And the one end of the spectrum, the kind of one polar opposite end, would be I would think of it as the leftist side. It's the one that I'm least inclined to personally. But it's the sort of anybody with an R behind their name. If we've got some polling, or we've got some reason to believe that a more moderate candidate is much more likely to win than a candidate that might be farther to the right and more closer to my heart. But I need someone that can win. So if we're running in a blue state, for example, or a really purple district or a purple state or something, let's pick the person who can win, even if that's a little bit of a compromise that bothers us, but they're a Republican, they'll be better than the Democratic alternative. And the other end of the other extreme, one that I'm much closer to, I consider myself a kind of rock-ribbed, more Attila the Hun conservative, jokingly. And so I want to pick the person farthest to the right. And I feel like I hate to compromise. I'm sick of all the problems we have with that. I'm going to pick the person. If there's one principal conservative that's more conservative than other ones in that election, it's my duty. I've got to do that person. I'm going to pick that person. And the point I want to make to you is that this is probably kind of obvious that both polar extremes are going to have strengths and weaknesses. Probably the best choice is somewhere between those two poles. But let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses real quickly. The obvious strength with the more lefty position is, if you're right, if you've got polls you can trust, or if you have good reason to believe that the person that's more moderate, that's closer to the mushy middle, or however you want to put it, you can see my bias in the way I'm putting it. If that person has the better chance to win, you've got a better chance to get your candidates to be elected, and they're better alternatives to the leftists that would otherwise be in that office. The obvious weakness of that is the last 30 years as Republicans, we end up with these rhinos who betray us and break our hearts and come in saying they're going to be more conservative, and they inevitably are more leftist than we thought, or they compromise, they break the first time they get any opposition, they fold like a house of cards, and we end up with these rhinos that are driving us crazy. We end up getting less than we could have gotten if we would have actually stuck to our guns and picked a principled, consistent conservative and fought for them. If we could have won that, that'd be so much better than this milk toast thing that we end up with. And the opposite of the end, obviously the strength of it is it's the best of both worlds. If I can actually get the person, if I can vote for somebody who's conservative as I want them to be, the most conservative person I can find, if they win, it is bliss, right? I get someone who's going to, and I think they're going to be successful because I'm a conservative, because I think conservative principles work. They are, reality on reality's terms. It's going to be so much better for everyone if we get a conservative candidate. Therefore, that's the best. The potential weaknesses, obviously, if you pick people that are too far right, if they really are too conservative for the electorate. If I'm on the right side electorate, and I know that I am, I'm not going to be satisfied. I'm not going to be happy if I have to pick someone else, but pick someone more moderate. But boy, it doesn't feel good to lose. I stuck to my principles, and I picked someone that I knew was too far right to win, and it was a winnable race with someone's right of center, but I lost the race because I picked someone farther right. And when I think about this, I always think of the people that are the most purist about this. I always think of the kind of minor parties, the small fringe parties. So on the left, you have the Greens. On the right, you have libertarians. And boy, those people, I understand the appeal. There's such a kind of self-righteous warmth about yourself that you can feel so pure. I stuck to my guns. I'm not like you sellouts of these establishment people. Ugh, you had to settle. You went for Mitt Romney or Nikki Haley or somebody, and look what you got. And even if they win, you're half ashamed of them, that you voted for them, and you have no right to complain when they give you a bunch of crappy, mushy policies, or compromise with the left way more than they have to. I've got this principles. I stood on my principles. And even if you win, I mean, even if you lose, you can say, you can still feel good about yourself. And so obviously that's a downside. I guess it's for you if you really feel like that's the most important thing. I'm going to stick to my guns. And if I lose 100% of the time, I'm going to lose, but I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to feel good about myself, even if my candidates haven't won. That is fine. And God bless you if that's what you want to do. But you have to go into that knowing you are never, ever, ever going to give a candidate you vote for to win. You're never going to have a libertarian governor, a libertarian president, or whatever, or a green one if you're crazy on that side. It's not going to happen. And you live with that. And so the time to worry about that is when we're in election cycle, right? When you're trying to find somebody, you want to try and you were looking at all opportunities on the right, options on the right. Let's pick the best one we can. And all these questions kind of come in there. And it's tough because each of these decisions I don't mean to make it sound like there's an easy right answer, because it's always who is the most electable person. And if Brian Kemp can win in Georgia, and he's more conservative or less conservative or whatever, but if the other guy he's more who I want, do I want to take the guy when it's a coin toss? And if he loses, Stacey Abrams is my governor in Georgia, or do I go with the guy that might not be my whole cup of tea, but he's more likely to win? That's a tough thing to kind of work out. And what I thought about thinking about this was, I can take a historical example and get away from the kind of tensions right now. We've just been through a pretty contentious. Some of us have been arguing within the tent here on the CEO site and elsewhere about the Republican primaries. Take this back to a historical context, and let me kind of see if I can lay this argument out for you. And I could use a meme, but you've probably seen this meme. It's kind of a joking thing online where they have a person. It's an easy way to mock somebody for hypocrisy. So you'll say something like this: Joe Biden, I hate the way Trump insults and demeans everybody who disagrees with him. Also, Joe Biden, all MAGA voters are Nazis, right? We see that kind of makes fun of that person's hypocrisy. Well, let me apply that to the closest thing we conservatives have to a secular saint, Abraham Lincoln. Here's Abraham Lincoln. If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. Amen, Abe. That's the best. That's our Lincoln. That's the guy we like, right? The kind of moral gravitas, the Christian principles, the deep ethical kind of understanding in slavery is so wrong. And he spoke with that kind of moral, thundering Old Testament prophet voice. That's our Lincoln. But also Lincoln, if I could save the Union without saving any slave, I would do it. Freeing any slave, I would do it. If I could save the Union by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. If I could save the Union by freeing some slaves and leaving others alone, I would do that. Oh, Abe, it's not good Lincoln, right? That's maybe you've heard people good Trump and bad Trump. That is bad Abe after the good Abe. This was from a letter in 1862. I think it was in August of 1862, something like that. Lincoln's already president. The Civil War has already been ramping up, getting bloodier as it goes. And I think the point is, look at that context. The pragmatic Lincoln, let me get half a loaf if I can. I want to save the Union. And if I have to make moral compromises, I'm going to make them if that'll let me preserve the Union. And it's easy enough now to judge in hindsight, and we should be kind of morally shocked by that. That what do you mean? What are you thinking? You would leave people in slavery just to keep what is it worth keeping the Union together if the price is to have our fellow human beings enslaved? And yet, in that moment, I think there's a lot of documentation from Lincoln's life and from personal letters and stuff. I think we know he was outraged by slavery, morally outraged by it. I think he thought he had confidence that the moral arc of the universe was bending the right way, that slavery would soon be gone in the United States. But the choice he had to make in the moment was, with all these people being slaughtered and all this, it was clear now that the South was going to fight this thing out. He wanted to try and save the Union, and he would make that compromise. Now, at the same time, in his defense, the Emancipation Proclamation came out January 1st of 1863, so 4 months later. And I think he had a draft of that already written, was working on it in August when he wrote this famous quote that's disappointing. But the point is, if even Lincoln can have that kind of compromise, that is sobering to us. But I think it also should make us a little bit hesitant to judge so harshly about it if even that guy could have that kind of failing. And so I come back to the 20th century. William F. Buckley, if you don't know him, you should. He's a great conservative thinker. A God and Man at Yale was his first book in the mid 50s, when he was just getting out of an undergrad. Great writer, great thinker. He has a famous quote. He was a New Yorker, and someone asked him in the late 50s, I think it was, he would have an interview, and someone said, how do you pick a candidate in a Republican primary in New York, in a blue state, in a blue city? If you've got a mayor or a state senator or a governor of New York, and you're trying to find a Republican candidate to go up against them, the deck is stacked so far against you already. How do you choose a candidate? And Buckley famously said, his quote is, vote for the most right viable candidate who can win. And in a way, that's not satisfying to the purist in me, that I want to vote for the most right candidate. And if I go down, I'm going down fighting for principle. But I think Buckley, he stood the test of time. I think his point is a good one, which is if you have a far right candidate who's your heart, it's really what you want, but New York well enough, you've lived there your whole life, you know what the voting base in New York is like, and that person has a 1% chance to win. And you might have someone toward the moderate middle, they might give you 75% or 65% of what you want as a conservative, but they have the person's charming and he's got a good name in the state, or his family's been influential, whatever it is, that person has a much better chance to win. I think Buckley has some wisdom for us there. Pick the most right, viable candidate that you can get. So I say that all in the context, as you imagine now. Uh, After this primary, you all, if you've been reading my columns, you all know I was a DeSantis supporter, and because I think he's farther right than Trump I don't want to start arguments with anybody, but I think that there's lots of evidence for that. I could make that case, but this is not the time for that. He is out. Right now, Nikki Haley is still in, and I just wince at how do you support Nikki Haley? She's so much farther left than Trump, in my opinion. I think she did a great job as the ambassador to the UN. She did a great job then. I really like that. And she's had a lot of conservative positions she's taken over the years, but especially lately gone off the rails to the left, in my opinion. But I would really have to hold my nose to vote for her. But I would, in the general election, if the party picked her, I would vote for her. I am happy to vote. I'll crawl over broken glass to vote for Trump. I'm praying for Trump to win in November. And I'm a Christian. I'm literally praying. That's not a figure of speech. I'm literally praying for Trump to win. But DeSantis was my first pick. That's irrelevant to me now. I've got to join arms with everybody and on our side and kind of go for Trump. And I want to close with this idea. I said you can't go wrong listening to William F. Buckley generally. You cannot go wrong listening to C.S. Lewis either. Most of you probably know him, a great writer, a 20th century English professor at Oxford, Christian apologist and novelist, the fantasy series, the Narnia series, and all these things. One of my favorite authors and thinkers. And Lewis, he had the template from Uncle Jesus about not judging other people as Christians. He didn't convert to Christianity until he was an adult. I think he was 30 or 31. He was already a genius and a professor of Anglo-Saxon and English literature at Oxford. J.R.R. Tolkien actually taught him, helped convert him, which is a pretty good pedigree when J.R.R. Tolkien helps get you where you need to go. But as he had been a fashionable intellectual atheist and most of his life, and after his conversion to Christianity, he writes really movingly, I think, about human terms. He's going to church and around a bunch of believers for the first time, and his natural human, and he's very smart, very observant of everybody, and he's irritated by everybody in church. He finds himself saying, oh, that woman, I can't believe her voice is so bad. She's desecrating these hymns, singing. If your voice is that bad, don't sing that loud. If any of us have been in church, you know that feeling. The guy next to me, some bumpkin, some farmer, he's got these unfashionable boots on in church, and he finds himself, and he kind of writes charmingly about like Satan's working at him as soon as he converts, to working at him to use the worst impulses that we all have, and to kind of find fault and to judge all the people around us, even when we're in church, even literally judging our co-religionists harshly. And so he talks about the judge not. And the quote I want to give you from Lewis is, he says, that is why Christians are told not to judge. We see only the results which a man's choices make out of his raw material. But God does not judge him on the raw material at all, but on what he's done with it. And I think that's a very generous of heart way to look at it. And I think he goes on, he uses, just doing this from memory, but he uses the analogy of like you might be born with a Ferrari in terms of your temperament and health and personality. You're born with a Ferrari and someone else is born with a junker. You know, you can drink socially with people and it's not a problem for you. You don't become alcoholic. You're naturally kind of outgoing and charming with people, so you get along well with people. You can have sales jobs, or you can be persuasive and a good friend. You have lots of friends, social network. You like the company of women, but you're not a complete horn dog about it, and you're just being a off-putting creeper. And this other poor guy is born with a junker. He's got, God help him, if he takes one drink of alcohol, he's off on a bender for 6 weeks. Just horny, can't talk to women, drives him nuts, drives him away. He's introverted or awkward or semi-autistic or something, and just he has such a hard time in life. And Lewis's point is, that's why we're told not to judge. We're not God. We don't see what kind of raw material he got. We might be judged much more harshly because we're given such a good raw material and we've done so little with it, whereas another person has such struggles and everything. The reason I bring that all up is because this is my thoughts about this, my kind of call to unity here, that I know it's a little bit, I hope it doesn't seem sacrilegious to move from that context back to politics, which is far below religion, in my opinion. But I think this is the time when we have to fight our natural instincts. If you tell me, if I get an enthusiastic fellow conservative and says, I really am excited about Nikki Haley's candidacy, or Chris Christie, or I will not vote for Trump no matter what, he's such an obnoxious bore or whatever, and I can't stand it, I'll just not vote if I don't. I just, I'm C.S. Lewis in church. How can you sing so badly? How can you wear that stupid clothes? How can you have those idiotic ideas? But I have to stop myself because I don't know their material. I don't know maybe they have an obnoxious boss that reminds them of Trump and they just can't bring themselves to vote for it. Or they're more of a moderate, or maybe I've got friends who are Democrats or lefties and they have good hearts and everything else, but they just can't get past what they've been taught about Republicans and conservatives. And so they're really tempted. They want to, even though Biden's falling apart before our eyes, they're still instinctively leaning toward voting for him. And my point is, we should all have more grace with each other as conservatives. I'm not going to call Nikki Haley a communist or a traitor or whatever else. Don't call Ron DeSantis a rhino or a traitor or whatever else. We're on the same side here. We're pulling for the same goal, and our job is to make this tent as big as we can. And even with our leftist friends, who we really do feel like, are you insane? How can you vote for a Democrat in the year of our Lord 2024? What is wrong? Take a breath. I know that's part of us. And again, I'll just close this by, you can see, those of you that have read my stuff, is this the same Martin Simpson who gleefully mocks leftists in 2 columns a week for the last couple of years? Imhotep Pelosi and Grandma Squanto Warren and all the things I've said, cruel things I've said about the opposition. I know, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. And I think there is a place for righteous anger. There is a place for righteous mockery. There's people that are crying out to be mocked, and God help me, I'm bent that way and want to do it every chance I get. But this is the time to try to come together with each other, and we're actually gonna be a lot smarter between us. I hope you enjoy the mockery, and I'm trying to aim my barbs at people who deserve it. But in the bottom line is, when we come to it in November, anybody who's going to vote for Trump is my friend. Anybody who's going to vote for Joe Biden, God bless him. It's like after the Civil War, right? We're going to bind up our wounds. I don't want you to be our enemies. I want you to be our friends. If we can beat your candidate like a rented mule in November, let's all come together after that. But in the meantime, let's come together. Hold your nose if you have to. Ignore Trump's excesses and mockery and whatever else that drives you nuts. This is a battle we're in, and it's a battle we have to win. And I think I just have grace for each other and with each other. Try to take the barbs, try to aim right now, the best thing we can do is aim at the real opponent and not people in our own tent. That's my thoughts in the middle of February. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.